Barack Obama has secured 4 more years in term as President of the United States. But with the US elections finally over, the attention has now turned to how the US economy can and should move forward with recovery. Joining me now on the phone right now to share his views with us is Joel Naroff, founder and president of Naroff Economics. Joel, despite the election outcome, there is one huge obstacle that is still clouding the economic outlook for the US, and that's the obvious partisan divide in Congress. How can we actually move forward and address the looming fiscal cliff? I mean, there is still a lot of anxiety in the markets about this.
Well, there's no question, while the presidential election removed one of the uncertainties, who's going to be the next president, it didn't change the dynamic in the Congress a whole lot, and especially between now and Obama is inaugurated for the second term, we're still going to have this lame duck Congress. So the result is that the fiscal cliff is going to have to be solved by the current Congress, and that's going to require compromise. With the election, I think we can pretty much say that some of the upper income tax increases will be sustained. The issue is how much is the minimum income level. Basically, we need compromise. The president's in a stronger position, but he's going to have to be the one that says, okay, this is what I want. I'm going to give you something in return so it's palatable for the House to come along. And I think that that's going to be the case. The fiscal cliff has an, I won't say solution or easy solution, but it has a way of being resolved such that we don't fall off it. And I think that whether it happens by January 1st or the first couple of weeks in January, that's going to happen.
Once this is resolved, do you expect we might see an uptick in, for example, business and consumer confidence?
Oh, I think there's absolutely no question that once we get past the fiscal cliff, we will see this economy begin to shift gears. Keep in mind, business confidence has been falling for the last few months, and business leaders have been saying quite clearly they're being very cautious about their spending and their hiring because of the fiscal cliff. If we resolve it by the end of the year, we'll get not only the hiring and spending that we normally would in the first half of 2013, but businesses have some catch-up to do. They've got to hire those people, do the spending that they put off for the last 3, 4, 5 months of 2012. So for me, I think all that catch-up, as well as the fact that we have already seen the economy begin to accelerate, tells me that the first half of 2013 is going to be really good because both business and consumer confidence will rise. That'll lead to more spending, more investment, and more hiring.
For a good part of the country that was supporting Mitt Romney to become president, another question mark is what Obama will now do to tackle and rein in the spending and address the deficit.
Well, there's no question about it, and that's really wrapped up in the whole issue of the fiscal cliff. The fiscal cliff existed and continues to exist because of differences of opinion, not on whether the budget deficit should be cut, but how it should be cut. One side says it can only come out of spending. The other side says there has to be some tax increases. If we get this agreement and compromise on the fiscal cliff that includes both new revenue sources as well as some spending cuts, that will be the framework for reducing the deficit. And to me, when you have one side wanting one thing, the other side wanting something else, that's a roadmap for compromise. The question is whether the people in Congress are big enough to compromise.
Now, this is something, again, Romney used in his campaigns to voters about the unemployment rate, which under President Barack Obama has exceeded 8% for 43 months, although as of recent, the unemployment rate has come down to 7.9%. Various jobs data is signalling uneven progress in the labour market. What can be done now to tackle the problems in the job sector? And is it fair to say that ongoing improvement in employment will require a stronger rate of hiring?
Well, we're going to need a stronger rate of hiring, but if you take a look at the October employment report, for the last 3 months, we added 170,000 jobs a month in the economy. Some of it came from the public sector, no question about it. We need more private sector hiring. But if you recognize that during those 3 months, businesses were saying they're being cautious because of the fiscal cliff, imagine what job growth would be if we don't have the fiscal cliff problem holding back hiring. And the key point is once the fiscal cliff is resolved, businesses have to make up for all the hiring they didn't do in the last part of 2012. So I don't think there's a whole lot that we need to do. The labor market has been improving in an uneven manner, largely because of uncertainty. Remove the uncertainty when you have the housing market getting better, consumer confidence rising, consumer spending increasing, vehicle sales improving. All of these argue for a better economy and for businesses to hire going forward. That's going to happen once we remove the fiscal cliff. That is the biggest impediment at this particular point.
Moving on to discuss the healthcare in the US and the idea of nationalizing healthcare for everyone, what are your views on the Obamacare Act?
I think if you look at the issue of healthcare, you recognize that the employer-sponsored insurance programs is really no longer sustainable. It's becoming too expensive. It's making us less competitive in an international sense. And the result is ultimately we're going to lose a lot of businesses to a reduction in either the quality of the coverage they're providing or even dropping coverage completely. The result is that we need a massive restructuring in the way we think about and look at the health insurance system in this country, because the current system is really falling apart under its own weight. Obamacare may not be the best approach to that, but I think it's a starting framework.
If we turn now to international affairs and the challenges that lie ahead, what about the US's view on foreign policy going forward, in particular focusing on trade disputes with China and the Middle East? How do these relationships need to be managed over the next 4 years?
There's no question that the U.S. has finally come to recognize that being part of the global economy means selling goods to the rest of the world, not just buying goods from the rest of the world. And that's really a change in psychology that now will change the way that I think government approaches an awful lot of these things. When you didn't worry about selling, you didn't worry about the value of the dollar or the value of other countries' currencies. That's not the case anymore, and it's why Mr. Romney made the point during the election campaign in one of the debates that China is manipulating its currencies. That's a very, very important issue for the U.S. because it not only affects China, but it affects all the other countries that could compete with China in terms of selling goods to the U.S. So this is going to be one of the more difficult things as far as trade is concerned. As far as the Middle East is concerned, it's all about energy, and what's very, very clear is that the U.S. energy sector is exploding. And with shale oil and shale gas, we are taking over a leadership in oil production and gas production, and ultimately could lead to energy independence. That will change the dynamic. This could take 10 to 20 years, but over the next 5 years, we're likely to set in motion all of those factors that will allow that reality to come home.
Joel, thank you very much for sharing your comments and expertise in the US economy going forward. A pleasure to have you on the show again. Now, I'm afraid that's all we have time for at the moment, but don't forget to check out all the other exclusive interviews on DukascopyTV. For the moment, though, viewers, goodbye.